The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of Green Acres and our guests. These general gardening tips and suggestions may work for you, as well as those from alternative sources. When using any garden products or tools, read and follow all label directions. And learn how to make your yard summer strong at bewatersmart.info.
The Green Acres Garden Podcast is the podcast dedicated to helping gardeners hone their growing skills while we celebrate our love of plants. So whether you're new to growing or a seasoned gardener, you're sure to learn something new. Join the fun as we have conversations with world-class growers, passionate green thumbs, and professional garden experts from Green Acres Nursery and Supply. Listen every week. We'll answer questions you didn't know you had. And away we grow. Hello there, and welcome all you beautiful gardeners out there, all you beautiful Texan gardeners out there.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show. This is the Green Acres Garden Podcast, the #1 gardening podcast in the world, as long as you don't fact check that. I'm your host, Kevin Jordan, the Cultivator Kid, back in studio for another great episode. I had so much fun. I'm looking forward to sharing this one with y'all. And we met up with another amazing Texan, someone y'all can be really proud of, Dr. Greg Grant. He's a horticulturist out there in Smith County. He works with Texas AgriLife, Texas A&M AgriLife, and he is so experienced, has so much knowledge, and I think he's the perfect person for this episode. What'd you think, Austin?
Oh, I totally agree. I learned so much from Greg, and it's because he seems to be an expert in all of the regions of Texas. He's gone around and he's learned all over, which is really cool because there are so many different regions. And this is now our second Texas edition of the podcast, and it's been a fun journey for us as we've been learning all about growing in Texas. And this is one of the main things that I've been getting schooled up on is the diversity of regions in Texas.
It's incredible.
It really is, isn't it, Kevin?
Absolutely. So from my understanding, there's over 11 distinct ecoregions, and some of those even have like subcategories within them. The state is massive, Austin. Over 250,000 square miles that include deserts, forests, mountains, marshes, prairies, plains, riparian environments, and even more. It's a place where the eastern habitats of the U.S. meet the western ones, where the southern subtropical zones then give way to the northern temperate regions. And it's a state where amounts of annual rainfall, they vary dramatically from region to region. It's an incredible place with so much diversity to consider when growing. I love it. There's so much to learn. There's a lot of people out there that might be local experts. Greg is not only a local expert, but he knows everything about the state. He's very experienced.
That's why it's good to have him on the show, and I'm excited for everyone to learn about it. He hails from Smith County, which is cool because Green Acres has a store there called the Hughes Plant Farm. And if you're out in Smith County, specifically, this store is in Tyler. And if you ever find yourself in Tyler, I recommend go check this store out. It's really cool. They've got a lot of beautiful plants there. And that's in addition to our other two stores, Green Acres Nursery and Supplies, that are in Melissa and Irving. So we've got a few stores out there in that area, but specifically to Smith County out there, we've got Hughes Plant Farm. So that's where Greg Grant is from and has a lot of experience, like we were saying. So let's go ahead and jump into our interview with Greg Grant to learn all about growing in Texas. Here we go.
All right, how's it going there, Greg Grant?
Doing good. Hey, glad to talk to you about gardening today. I am Greg Grant. I'm the Smith County horticulturist for the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service in Tyler, Texas.
So, Greg, you're out there in beautiful Tyler, Texas. Tell us a little bit about your climate zone and what that actually means for your climate and your weather and your garden.
Sure. I work in Tyler, which is Smith County. I actually live 3 counties to the east in Shelby County, but they're pretty similar. We're in zone 8B, and so we have relatively mild winters, generally down into the teens, occasionally colder, hot summers, generally upper 90s, lower 100s. Got about anywhere from 45 to 48 inches of rainfall a year. So, but most of that comes in the fall and the winter and the spring with dry summers. So about 9 out of every 10 years, we got wet winters and dry summers. Once in a blue moon, we'll have a dry winter, which is not good. And once in a blue moon, we'll have a wet summer, which we'll take. And so it's a lot like the rest of the Southeast. Acidic soils, fairly mild winters with some hard freezes in there, and hot, dry summers.
Texas is a massive, massive state. I mean, there's so many different regions that you can grow in. What does it really take to be successful in a Texas garden?
Luckily, I've been doing it long enough that I had the opportunity to move around the state, because if you don't, then you better stick to your one region and just talk and teach about that region, because it's depending on where you are in the state, you can be telling people exactly the opposite of what to do. It's so very different. And so it's really difficult to approach it from a statewide viewpoint, because it's basically the Great Plains in the north and the tropical Mexico in the south. You got Chihuahuan Desert in the west. You got swamps in the southeast. We're extremely acidic. Where I am with a pH about 4.2, you get to the center of the state, it's about 8.2 in solid limestone. And so first thing you got to do is decide where you are, and are you going to be a local expert, which I suggest. And if you're going to be a statewide expert, you better travel around, live in those different areas. And luckily, I saw jobs like a trip to Baskin and Robbins, and I tried every flavor. And so the fact that I lived in Dallas, and I lived in San Antonio, and I lived in College Station, I lived in Houston, and so you can talk about the whole state if you've been there. If you haven't and you hadn't gardened there, you better hush, because you're going to steer people in the wrong direction, because it's so different. And so I say stick to where you are, and if you're going to work on the state, you better go live there and garden there, because it's very different.
What are some good ornamental options for someone landscaping out in the Dallas area?
A lot of native plants, a lot of plant, even southwestern plants from the desert Southwest, plants from Mexico, plants from the Great Plains. I mean, you can do stuff from that does even well in Oklahoma and Kansas and stuff like that, but you just want to avoid things that you're going to see in Atlanta and the eastern part of the country. And so the faster you figure out what those choices are that do well, the happier you're going to be. And every time I give a talk or a lecture, the first thing I say is, if you're not happy with your gardening, you're doing it wrong. And so gardening is supposed to make you happy. And if you're grumpy or frustrated, stop what you're doing, back up and start over, because you have read the wrong manual. And so if you're not a happy gardener, then either get out of the profession or read another book, because you're not doing it right, because it's supposed to make you happy.
I love that. I think that's great advice. I think oftentimes we kind of, bog ourselves down with trying to do too much, or, like you said, growing plants that really aren't well suited to a location, and maybe you keep them alive, but they're struggling, and then you're also struggling, and then it becomes less fun. So for us, we always talk about right plant, right place, because for me, I've noticed I'm guilty of that as well in my past, trying to grow plants.
I mean,
yeah,
it is fun at first. But when it ceases to be fun and you get frustrated, then it's time to get on board with the stuff that really likes to grow there. And if it's fun forever trying things, that's okay. That's the beauty of it. It's your garden, your plants, your money. You do what you want, and you don't pay attention to me or anybody else. But if you're frustrated, you just know that there's a better way.
There we go. Better way. Well, speaking of better ways, you've literally wrote books on books about better ways. One specifically is one on heirloom gardening. What makes heirlooms special to you? And are there heirlooms that are like Texas tough, ones that do especially well in some of your unique ecoregions?
The group of plants that I love the most are bulbs. Most of the things that thrive in Texas are in the amaryllis family. And so crinum lilies, Hymenacalis, daffodils, jonquils, narcissus. Now, there's a really strong dividing line, though, between that alkaline part of Texas and the eastern part. And so here I do lots of jonquils and narcissus. And it's not the ones that they grow in Holland. It's this sort of special select heirloom pass along stuff that's in the South. But we're talking about survivors that will come back year after year after year, hundreds of years later. And then things like oxblood lilies and like Horus and whatnot. So those tend to be my favorites, because they get older, and you're talking about things that you can start with a little bit and they multiply and they get better each year. And a lot of people say, well, they don't bloom for very long. And I always say, well, ice cream doesn't last for very long, but I can't live without it either. And so
that's cool. I love bulbs personally. They're beautiful. And for me, it's like planting garlic, or it's like it's one of those things where flowering bulbs, they're so beautiful. Right depth, right season, they come up. It's something you look forward to. We love them out here, and it's good to hear that there's ones out there that do well also, because for me as a gardener, it's easy.
Yep, they're not the traditional ones, so we have to really coach people on which ones that work, but the ones that do are pretty much eternal and multiply and come back forever.
Well, I want to dig into a little bit more of the edibles. I know you've written a bunch on Texas fruit, vegetable gardening. I really want to get some practical usable information for some of our listeners who maybe are like, hey, I'm living out here. I would love to have an edible garden, but I want to do it right. I don't want to struggle. So from our listeners all the way from Lubbock to Laredo, Dr. Greg Grant, what's the biggest mistake folks are making when growing edibles out in Texas?
Vegetables are the very first thing my granddad taught me how to grow. So I fell in love with wild plants first, but then the first cultivated things I grew, I'm considered sort of a flower person, but my first cultivated plants were actually vegetables because I come from country people. Matter of fact, I'm on this very property, which was my grandparents' house and my grandmother's grandparents' house. My grandparents had a garden there for maybe 30 years. I've had a garden on the same spot for almost 50 years. And so the three problems that most people run into beginning vegetable gardeners are not enough sunlight, planting at the wrong time, and then vegetables are not wild plants. They're not wildflowers. They're not heirloom roses. They're not heirloom bulbs. And so they take more fertility. Texas A&M AgriLife has a really wonderful Aggie horticulture website. And on the fruit and nut resources on there, there's a easy gardening homeowner fact sheet on every vegetable that you can grow. And so we tell people, don't even start till you start. There's one on soil prep. There's one on planting. There's one on design. There's one on broccoli. There's one on tomatoes. There's one on potatoes. And so don't even think about starting until you've covered the basics. Have some good soil, have full sunlight. You'd be surprised in hot Texas, and I'm sure California's the same way, how many people put their garden under a tree. And you say, why did you put it under the tree? Well, it's hot out there in the sun. Well, there is no commercial vegetable farm on planet Earth under a tree. And so you gotta have full sun and timing. There's 6 times a year when we plant here, and most people think there's one in the springtime. And so you got to be exactly right. These windows of opportunity open and close, and you got to start when the door is opening and it finishes for everybody, and you move on to the next crop. And so the beginners just think you plant one time and fruit, vegetables spew out year round. Well, it just doesn't work like that.
I imagine your extension, do you guys utilize, was it planting calendars and schedules like that?
Absolutely. Yep.
So I found that to be really helpful.
Depending on where you are in the state. So yeah, every talk I give, we got them right outside the office door. We put them online. We put them on Facebook page. I show them in every talk I give, and I say, follow this calendar. And there's these little bars at the time of the year when you plant them, because there's a real distinct, cool season. And matter of fact, we divide them up into cool season, warm season, hot season, and we get two cool season crops in, 2 warm season crops in, 2 hot season crops in, for a total of 6 crops if you do it right. But it's very, very specific on the timing. And we hear all the time people say, well, I can't grow parsley, or I can't grow cilantro, or I can't grow dill. Well, they're planted at the same time when they plant their spring garden, which is not the time you plant those crops. So that's usually an indication that people haven't studied the calendar. You can't. My grandmother Ruth, she planted everything on Good Friday. All going to be blessed. They're all going to make a great crop. Well, it's like Goldilocks. That's just right for some things, but it's too early for a bunch of stuff and too late for a bunch of stuff. So we can't just plant one time a year and expect it all to do well.
Yeah, there's definitely unique qualities to each of these plant groups.
Absolutely.
I was out in the garden today at our school, and we're gardening brassicas. We're getting ready to harvest some citrus and things like that. We're pulling limes and lemons and mandarins off, looking towards the oranges. But I was just mentioning to the kids today, it's like there's a reason why we don't grow tomatoes right now, and it's like, what is that?
Yeah, and the non-gardeners, they don't understand that. So all they know is a grocery store that has produce year round. So you just think we can grow it year round, but no, people don't realize there's a season for every fruit and vegetable now.
Well, to one listening who maybe is kind of new to gardening or these concepts, why is it so important? Why is there timing involved? What kind of causes? Why are the seasons so important for these plants?
It's 2 things. It's mostly about temperature, and so we have things that what distinguishes a cool season crop from a warm season crop is cool season crops have built-in antifreeze, and they can actually freeze and thaw without dying.
That's like broccoli.
Yeah, exactly, broccoli.
So
cabbage,
cool.
spinach, kale. Where a tomato or a cucumber, any freeze, and that tissue is dead. And then we've got our warm season crops that can't take any frost, but also can't take intense heat. So you think about tomatoes and peppers and eggplant. And then we got some really heat-loving things like here we grow southern peas and okra and sweet potatoes. Well, those have to be hot, but they can't take any frost, but they also need hot temperatures. So temperature divides it all up. Some to do with moisture, some to do with day length, but mostly has to do with temperature.
I appreciate that. Now, what are some of the more underappreciated Texas-friendly fruits or veggies that home gardeners should try out that you would consider? Because I know sometimes we kind of have our mindset, I'm going to grow this or that, but sometimes there's some kind of hidden rogues out there, some options that we didn't realize that could be very productive and delicious. Do you have any
That's
selection?
you do a good job because you ask all the right questions, and so when we ask, you can go to a group of strangers or non-gardeners or kids and say, "We're going to grow fruit. What do you want to grow?" And they'll say, "Apples, oranges, and bananas."
Yep.
Okay, we can't grow any of those here, and so let me tell you what we can grow, and then and they'll say, "Well, I want to grow it organically too." Okay, that gets us down to like hard canning pears, blueberries, blackberries, figs. I don't like any of those. Well, as my other mentor, Dr. Parsons, would say, you better learn to like them because that's what you can grow here. And so there's lots of fruit trees that are difficult here. There's some that are really easy. And my sweet little wife is a good example. She doesn't like figs. Well, figs live forever. They're high in fiber, they're high in potassium, they're high in sugar. And in the old days, people cherished them because you had something high in sugar and you didn't have to do anything to. But nowadays we have so many things from the grocery store that we don't appreciate those things that are easy to grow. So here, things like figs and blackberries and we can't grow soft, pears like you do in Washington State. We can grow these old hard cannon pears, but the old country people, they made pear pies, they made pear preserves. You can make all sorts of stuff. We can't grow apples here, but you can make all the same apple things out of these old hard pears. And so you have to learn pretty quick. And it is hard to tell people that because I'm like, by golly, I want to grow beautiful peaches and beautiful plums, and I want apples. Well, wanting and doing are two different things. And so at some point, it's okay to try that. And so sometimes people say, well, you're just being negative. Why do you tell the people they can't do stuff? Well, I've been around long enough that I want them to be successful. And if I know something's going to be a failure, now I don't beat them over the head with it. And so if you want to do it, do it. But one year a guy came to the office he was moving from Washington State to Smith County and said, we're going to move here and we'd like to put in a cherry orchard. And I said, well, we'd love to have you in Smith County, but you're not even going to grow a cherry tree, much less a cherry fruit. And he's like, well, I appreciate you telling me that because and so that's the case. But there are a lot of fruit trees and there are a lot of nut trees and things out there that just won't work in any of Texas, either too tropical or they need cooler weather. And so you have to learn real quick. And people look at our agri-horticulture website with the fruit and nut resources, and they'll say, well, where's such and such publication? I'll say, well, if you don't see the publication on there, that's your first indication that you shouldn't be growing it here. So if we didn't take the time to tell you how to do it, that means you don't need to be doing it. And then, well, I want to do it anyway. Well, that's okay. And I used to enjoy doing that. And you're going to prove us all wrong. But in the long run, you're not going to be the first one to produce apricots or put in a olive orchard that makes you a lot of money. And so, a lot of things you can't do, but you need to learn to grow the things. And here again, go visit gardens for people that have left them, where they've turned off the water, where the people died, and see what their orchard looks like, see what their garden looks like. And the garden will tell you real quick what liked to grow there and what somebody was making grow there.
You brought up earlier, Greg, how there's really unique soils all over your guys' state that is kind of offers these kind of different challenges to growing, from the alkaline to the acidic. But when it comes to veggie gardening, are you, to kind of counteract that, are you guys fans of raised gardening out there? Are you a big container guy? Do you grow vertically to try to get away from that soil and kind of bring in your own soil, or do you just amend and then work with what you got?
It's once again, you're spot on with all your questions. So I can tell you're a professional at this.
You've got great taste, Greg. Just kidding.
I'm in an area where we've got sandy loam, and I was brought up with row crop sort of farming people that made a big old patch of peas or a big old patch of corn or a big old patch of potatoes. And so I love gardening with the tractor, making long rows I love container gardening. I love raised bed gardening, but you're not going to make a crop of sweet corn or purple hull peas in a little raised bed. And so sometimes you need a larger plot. Otherwise, it all just depends on your soil. We've got good sandy loam here. There's some here right up the road. My parents live on a 500-foot hill it's red clay, and it's much more challenging. And so you got to wait 3 weeks after a rain. You can garden there, but it's very different from sand or sandy loam. But you get to College Station, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, or even Houston, and you got this black clay, and it can be done. but it's, I grew up with a sandy garden in Longview. They're not far from Tyler, and it could rain in the morning. I could plow it in the afternoon.
Oh, I'm so jealous just hearing about this fast draining soil. Oof.
But in the clay, it rains and it turns into the sticky gunk, and you've literally got to wait weeks, and you got to time your tilling and that sort of thing. But Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, you've got this Edwards Plateau, this big limestone uplift, and so unfortunately, you may have anywhere from a millimeter to an inch of that black clay on top of solid limestone rock, like you build a building out of. And so you can't grow in the ground. And so in those particular places, literally, it's like I literally built a raised bed in San Antonio on an asphalt parking lot one time. And so it's kind of similar. You literally have to build a raised bed and bring in your garden soil to be able to grow, if you want to grow some tomatoes, peppers, or lettuce, or spinach, or whatever. And I love a raised bed like that, and most of our school gardens are like that. And I love I've even got a cinder block bed out back right in this backyard where I grow my sweet potatoes and I grow my Irish potatoes. I love a bed that you can reach halfway across to the middle and reach from the other side to the middle. It's all specially prepared, purchase soil that's never too wet, never too dry. And so I love a raised bed, but sometimes you got to grow a big crop of something. And I was the only one that gardened in the family. So if you got a mama that's going to put up hundreds of ears of corn or hundreds of jars of pickles, or entire freezers full of frozen peas and stuff, sometimes you do need a big plot. But it's all about what you got to grow in.
Awesome. Well, now I'm curious. You got me hungry. What is like your favorite vegetable that you're most Texas proud of? Like, what makes you so proud that you guys grow out there and that you get to enjoy?
I'm sort of a redneck hillbilly over here in the piney woods in East Texas, and so mine are simple. I love cream peas and purple hull peas. I love okra, and I love sweet potatoes, that just sort of traditional southeastern country foods, because you can make a lot. They're easy to grow, and that's another thing. We've got a lot of issues in the country with food insecurity and hunger and affordability and whatnot. And so if you're trying to make mass quantities of something, well, there are some things that make a lot. And so the fact that, purple cream peas and crowder peas and those peas make a lot, and you don't require fertilizer, and you can get two crops in, you can save your seed, you can eat the dry seed, you can eat the fresh. And then okra makes we got a lot more summer than we do winter. So you can produce something for, 5 or 6 months until you're just sick of okra. And the same with sweet potatoes. My little bed out there makes 2 bushels of sweet potatoes.
Nice.
You can also eat the foliage. And so if you're trying to feed yourself, there are some crops like that. And then I came from people like that. You know how it is. It's implanted in you as a child. You don't think about it as a child. You're eating these because it's what you have to eat. And the next thing you know, you're hooked on it for life. These are my favorite things, and they're easy to grow. And I just really enjoy because they make a lot too.
Yeah, I always love when I grow something and it's like abundant. I'm like, oh my gosh, I put a certain level of effort into it and time, and then you get so much in return. You go, I'm gonna grow this again. All right, now I'm going from we're gonna travel from the vegetable garden out to the prairie a little bit. I've heard that I know we've talked a lot about flowers and fruit and veggies, but I heard that you're also really passionate about your guys' native prairies out there, the wildlife and ecological restoration, and how Texas gardening kind of plays a role in that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I try to teach people, one, how to appreciate, what little. There's not really a lot of native natural areas left, but at least we have some native wildlife, native plants, and native flowers. Texas is long known for its wildflowers. And so I'm trying to get people to save what little bits and pieces we have left. We've got pollinator decline all over the planet. And so bees, birds, butterflies, all in decline. Hardly anything looks like it did when I was a kid, all the fields and flowers that I fell in love with. So I'm trying to, one, teach people how to preserve what little bit is left, but also trying to teach them that, there's a way we as gardeners kind of control the future, because gardeners are already gardening. We know how to grow stuff. We know how to plant stuff. We know how to identify stuff. We know how to collect seed. We know how to stratify. We know how to scarify. And so to me, the future is in the hands of gardeners. And for most of my career, we've been the good guys, but it's mostly been about making stuff pretty. And now it's kind of the point of just being pretty isn't enough anymore. And so we've always been part of the solution, but in hindsight, we're also been part of the problem. We're the guys that like to use irrigation, that like to use fertilizer, that like to use pesticides, because we went to school to learn how to do it, to use it all, to make stuff grow that's not even supposed to grow. Well, nature wasn't designed like that. And so in hindsight, I wish that I'd been taught, and I wish we'd teach everybody to study nature first, not study like the English garden manual on how to make something grow where it's not supposed to grow. And so, yeah, I love doing pocket prairies. I've got 20 acres of longleaf pine. I'm working on a pine savanna out back. I like taking my little prairie and making it into a big prairie. But I want to teach people how to do that in their gardens, whether it be a pot or a bed or a perennial border, to try to use at least 50 or 75%. There are a lot of cool native plants, native grasses, native perennials, native shrubs, native trees. Gardening for other people, for other animals, for other species. It's a much bigger, more noble cause. And so we've got to be much smarter about what we do.
Greg, this is your call to action for all the Texans out there listening who are maybe getting inspired or getting fired up for the next seasons to be growing in. This is your call to action. What are your words of wisdom or to get encouragement to all the Texan gardeners out there?
I would say in Texas, and of course, every state's different. Everybody has their challenges, but we got some really big challenges, and it's so different. Find somebody in your area, in your soil type, in your climatic zone, in your eco region. Find an old established garden or a gardener and go hang around them, just like I did as a kid, and learn about real gardening. So don't start, on the internet. Don't start on television. Don't start with a real garden in the dirt, outside, seeing what they do, seeing what they're growing. And it's just a good way it'll save you a lot of heartache.
Greg, thank you so much. I know folks can read some of your blogs at Greg's Ramblings at arborgate.com. He's with the Texas Gardener magazine. There's Greg Grant Gardens on Facebook. And of course, the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. We will put links in the description below. But Greg, thank you so much. I hope is there anything else you wanted to say before we let you go?
No, I'll come back anytime and you come visit sometimes.
Oh man, I would love it, man. Texas sounds so much fun. I would love to go out there, and I can't wait to learn from y'all. Thank you so much, Greg. We'll see you next time.
All right, take care.
All right, we're back from our interview with Greg Grant. Big shout out to Greg. Thank you so much for meeting with us. I had a blast. Kevin, I know you had a blast. What were you thinking talking to Greg?
Dude, I was learning so much. I mean, Greg is one of those people that has so many years of knowledge that you just want to keep talking to him. I know our interviews get edited down, but the folks don't realize we talked for over an hour.
Oh, yeah.
It was amazing. One of those people, we're 2 for 2. So last on, we had the Texas garden guy, Destin Nowak. Destin, so friendly, warm, also knowledgeable. Greg was no different, and just had a warm time, learned so much. And it kind of led me, I was like, hey, let's get right to his website. I want to see the resources. So Greg Grant, he is actually the Master Garden Coordinator out there. And so it's kind of cool. They have a resource for folks. Austin, can you list this
for sure
in the description? We'll put the link below, and it's the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. There's so much easy to access information on gardening and growing. I picked it up. I was learning so much. I actually had a few things that I wanted to share even on there. They had the gardening do's and don'ts. And I won't list them all, but there's a few. But ones that kind of stood out, and this is for those Texan gardeners out there.
Is this a do or a don't?
These are the do's.
Okay, a do.
And so use recommended varieties for your area of the state. And I think that is probably one of the biggest lessons of today's episode.
That's what Greg was talking about.
He brought up, he's like, you can be a local expert, you can be a state expert like him, but that takes a lot of time and effort. And I think a lot of home gardeners, that it's interesting to learn about all those different regions for sure. But I think you might just have a lot more success a little bit quicker by becoming a local expert. Learn as much as you can about your local eco region, where you're at, what is the soil types you're dealing with, what kind of climate do you have right where you're at. The more you learn about your specific region, I think the better off you're going to be. And
sure.
I think that is great advice. Another one that they have on there that I thought was really cool was, examine your garden often to keep ahead of potential problems. I love that. That's good for any gardener, no matter where you're at.
I like the way you have your own phrase for that. You call it footsteps in the garden.
Yeah, it's the best thing.
I love that.
I mean, don't stomp on your plants, but yeah, just spend time out there. When problems become an issue, if you get to them before it's a big infestation or you notice things early on, you can kind of head it off, and then whether it's time or money that you're investing, those become less and less the quicker you kind of discover issues in the garden.
Some of the most fun times I have in my garden is the time of just walking around enjoying it.
So peaceful.
It's not the digging and the hard stuff. It's the
just observation.
Exactly.
And just quiet moments out there. Another one I thought was really good is, just keep the garden free of, diseases and weeds the best you can. Use mulches to conserve moisture, control weeds, and reduce ground rot. There's plenty more on there.
Do you have a good don't?
Oh, don'ts. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't want to focus on don'ts, but what's a good don't?
Well, it's don't depend on varieties that really aren't recommended for your area. You can try some of those in a limited amount, but it's you're really going to have a lot of success if you kind of start off with, whether it's ornamental or edible, find varieties that your neighbors, other people are already having success with, and then that you're surely are going to have some success as well.
Okay, that makes sense.
And just other things don't shade out other plants. Apply chemicals and pesticides, in a responsible way. Always read the label and those instructions and follow them, really closely.
For sure.
And so there's just a few. There's so much more on there. There's planting guides, planting calendars. They talk about, how much sun your garden needs. Of course, it's full sun for your veggie garden, of course. Soil preparation, adding organic matter. It improves clay soils. It also improves sandy soils. If you have really heavy clay, they talk about, adding in gypsum to help break that up. And then even the tried and true thing for right now, this time of year, that I highly recommend people do is don't work wet soil. If you're hearing these episodes and you're like, I'm getting fired up to garden and grow, and you go outside and you've had a lot of rain recently, and you dig up, you grab a handful of that soil, you squeeze it into a ball, and as you release that pressure, if it doesn't just kind of crumble away kind of quickly or easily with a little bit of pressure, if it stays in that shape that you made, it's probably a little bit too saturated to work. So you don't want to dig and cultivate into really saturated soil. Just wait a little bit.
Okay.
So
can I ask you why though?
Because it damages the structure of the soil. So instead of being kind of crumbly and kind of somewhat loose,
you might be overly compacting it.
Yes, and you're pushing the air out. You're kind of damaging the structure of the soil. It's not great.
Okay.
And of course, mulch.
Yeah.
And so they have all these things on there, things that we talk about each week, but it's all geared towards a Texan gardener. And there's some ways on there that if you are in a different region, it'll direct you. And so you can find a different resource to help you out if you're not in Smith County.
Yeah, I want to load up this episode description with resources for our listeners. So we'll definitely include this. This is the Texas Home Vegetable Gardening Guide from the AgriLife Extension. And then we've also got our own planting calendar from Green Acres. I highly recommend people check out the Green Acres Nursery and Supplies planting calendar for Texas, because it has what you should plant. This is for vegetables, what vegetables to plant and when. And I think it's very easy to follow, so check that out. And then also ask us questions if you're unsure about anything. You can contact me and Kevin directly at our Facebook group, the Green Acres Garden Podcast Facebook group. That link is in every episode description. And then we also have a couple more links for each relevant county that we have stores in. So we've got Collin County, Smith County, and Dallas County. I'll put the Master Gardener websites there so you can reach out to your local Master Gardeners. And dive through this, learn what you can, become a local expert, just like you said, Kevin. And this is exactly what Greg is all about, is become a local expert. I think this is so cool. And this is fun. So time to learn. And that's all the time we have for this week. Kevin, go ahead and take us out.
Dang, it has been a fantastic week. It led me on to even other resources. I started getting onto the Texas website for the Native Society there. Maybe we'll dig into that in future episodes, because there are some beautiful native plants out there that I started discovering. And man, I cannot wait to share those with people. And I'm kind of just, honestly, Austin, I'm falling in love with some of these plants out there. And these people are great, man. Greg, Destin, and who knows who we're going to meet next. I cannot wait.
Absolutely.
So until next time, garden friends, check out these resources, sharpen those gardening skills, have a great week, and come back again for another great episode of the Green Acres Garden Podcast. Until next time, garden friends, happy gardening to you all, and please never stop growing.